Hi, it's Dawn Kennedy. We're going to do the second video in how to do strategic planning. The first one was on market research, and thank you to those of you who watched it. If you got some value out of that, please subscribe to my channel because I will be adding more and more videos on the how-tos of business. So I am also a business owner. I own a coffee roastery, and I also have a background in strategic planning and project management, and I love teaching small businesses how to take the complexity out and the overwhelm and make it so that they understand the value in doing a plan. It does not have to be complicated or take all kinds of hours, but it is something that you need to do. It's going to give you clarity. It's going to let you know what you need to do next. It's going to increase your profitability. And also it's going to help you with resource management and just overall efficiency in your business. So this is the second video. We're going to be talking about what I would call the first phase of strategic planning if you don't start from market research. So strategic planning here, we're going to take all of the great ideas and the gaps that you've identified, and we're going to brainstorm them. And then we're going to take all of them and we're going to do a little teeny bit of analysis called a SWOT. And we're going to decide which ones we want to move forward with now. But we're also going to create a system that keeps those really other good ideas out in our world so that maybe they're good for another quarter or the quarter after. So this is for 90 days is how I like to do these, but ideas come in all the time. So since ideas come in all the time, make sure you have a place to write down your good ideas. Have a place that you can write down the things that come in. Maybe customers say something to you. Maybe you get an idea from a colleague or an employee. Maybe something just pops in your head in the middle of the night. Write it down. Make sure you're tracking all of those great ideas because they're not always, let's not do that. Sometimes it's, let's not do that right now. So if you did watch the strategic planning video, number one, if you will, on market research, you're going to know that you can ask yourself some very good questions about what your industry is doing, the collateral industries, and then what your customers are doing. What we're going to do now, though, is if you've identified gaps through the market research process, or if you just have a million great ideas, we're going to take those ideas and we're going to put them into a format that allows you to track them, to weigh them, if you will, or to do a quick analysis to figure out the priorities of implementing those ideas. Some ideas are very easy to implement. Maybe you need to add just a online scheduling system because people are asking you if they can just book online instead of having to call you or text you. And for a lot of businesses, there's still not this kind of seamless way to make appointments. That's a pretty simple one. Probably doesn't need a whole lot of analysis and work. Probably doesn't need to be in the queue of things to do for most businesses, for some maybe. So here's the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write down. We're going to identify the gaps, or we're going to write down all the good ideas. And if we identified gaps, we're going to just write one or two sentences about the value of approaching that gap or filling that gap. So if we were to do something about X, what is the value to the business? And this is important because unfortunately a lot of times we get good ideas, we try to implement them right away, maybe they're under-resourced or the timing isn't right, or maybe we did it in the wrong order, and it doesn't get us the result that we want. And when that happens, a lot of times we throw away these great ideas just a little too soon. My rule of thumb is once I've made a decision on the projects and things that I'm going to implement for a quarter, I do them for a full 90 days all in to see the result. And then I can tweak and recalibrate after the 90 days or decide if we want to continue. But also during that 90 days, I am checking the data and I'm looking at, kind of how things are going, the feedback that we're getting. Always be open to getting feedback. So as you find the gaps and the things that you want to fill, or you take your ideas and you want to do a little analysis on them, we're going to do something called SWOT. Okay, this is just how simple this is. You don't need anything complicated. But what we're going to do is we're going to take that idea, that gap that we see, that interest that we have, and we're going to run it through a really quick SWOT analysis. So SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I don't want this to feel overwhelming. I've actually gotten to the point where I can do a lot of it sort of in my head. But I did bring you an old SWOT that I did. This was about 4 years ago when we started the coffee roastery, and we wanted to look at whether or not we should put a wholesale line in or a resale line right away, because we sat down and thought through all the ways people can buy coffee from us, and then also all the ways that we could sell coffee. So this was our wholesale resale. So our sales and marketing and our target audience is, other stores, right? So to begin with, we actually started with specialty retail because we're a specialty coffee company. Over time, we've actually evolved to doing more grocery stores with certain blends and certain origins. So it's evolved over time. But let me sit down and explain to you how simple this is. So in order for us to consider going into the wholesale resale market where we sell our bags at a discount at wholesale to someone else to resell our product and give them some margin, we looked at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then we also could do some risk mitigation on that. So the first one, the strengths, is the store has their own audience. And they have a loyal audience in a lot of cases. So a lot of specialty retailers do have those raving fan buyers that'll go in there over and over again and buy from them. And they can get customers, direct to those locations, people who may not have been part of our Facebook group or part of our, just in our world, if you will. And we can go out further from our local area. So our local chamber and those kinds of things, those are more geared towards where we live. Whereas if we did wholesale and resale, we would be able to do that. So we could leverage their buyers. We could get into their audience and their market. But here's a weakness, okay? It's very high touch and it requires constant restocking. It needs to be built in properly into our production line. If we get too many stores too quick, it can be a capacity issue. So we need to make sure that the weaknesses that affect our overall business, if we implement this line of revenue, which we did, but I'm giving you the early on, is we had to think about who is our wholesale POC. It's high touch. If somebody owns a store and they call us because they have an issue or they need to reorder or something like that, they need to have the same point of contact all the time. So we needed to identify a point of contact and make sure that we had good, constant contact with them and we could respond to what they needed. It's a very high touch line of revenue. It's not as passive as somebody walking into a retail store. It's much more active. Again, the production and capacity is something that would have been I'm going to call it a weakness. It's not really that it's a weakness. It's a matter of making sure I'm identifying how it affects my operations so I don't just rush out there and get too much business. I've seen this happen before. I've had clients that went out and they did a lot of sales without building the foundation or at least considering it. And then it became a scramble. And instead of it being just this wonderful thing because they hadn't built the foundation or considered what they would need to do to support all those new sales, it actually became a little stressful for a time. So we want to avoid that. All right, the third thing is the opportunities. There are always new buyers. There are always new stores. Another thing is we sell coffee and it is actually an EBT food, meaning it's SNAP available. So if somebody who is familiar with our brand, wants to purchase using SNAP, they can do that. So there's another opportunity there if we can find retailers that also take SNAP. Not a lot of specialty retailers did, but the grocery stores, most of them do. And then the threats. So what were the threats to my business and operations if I were to sell it wholesale? Well, first of all, I have to give up some margin. So my profit margin has to go down. So I have to make sure that I have the right volume, and I also have to make sure that I'm comfortable knowing that it could take 90 days to build up another area for people to be familiar buying from them. So the other thing is we would maybe lose some of our retail customers to those local retail locations where they could just pick up our coffee. And then the other one is that the stores may not market our products specifically. So what does that require? That required some thoughts around risk mitigation. So what are some things that we did? Is we started making sure we were marketing those locations primarily as a convenient way for you to go and grab your coffee if you don't have time to make it out to see us. So actually our volume of sales did end up going up because we are kind of a destination. We're not sitting in a strip mall and we're not a coffee shop, so people don't come in and get lattes, right? So we are a make-at-home product for the most part. And so for us, we wanted to make sure that we identified those threats, not because they were going to be something that could maybe kill the deal, although that is possible if you're doing this analysis, that sometimes the threats will kill the deal. But we want to make sure that also we have some risk mitigation in there. So we go in there with full intention and understanding where we may have to do some work. Ultimately, on our website, we have a great page called Where to Find Us. And it says, if you are not in the area where we are, check out all of these other locations. We're in 10 other counties now in the region. And people send us messages all the time. Hey, I stopped by such and I saw your coffee there. I grabbed a bag. Amazing. Another thing we did was we found over time that our outlying retail partners didn't carry certain coffees because they didn't sell well there, like some of our origins of the month or the origins of the quarter. If somebody sees a bag of Sulawesi in the grocery store and it's a coffee from Sulawesi, Indonesia, if it's not familiar, chances are, unless they're truly an exotic coffee drinker, they're probably not going to grab it. So that line of business, this origin of the month, these exotic coffees actually stayed in-house. So it changed things a little bit because I was not wholesaling them and they stayed at retail and just required a little tweak that way. So once you've done your strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, threats, and again, this one from me, I always keep my hard copies of all the things I did when I started because it's just so much fun to go back to. And on occasion, I have gone back and looked at them and gone, oh, we haven't done that yet. So it's great if you can find a folder, if you have a place where you can keep all of your notes as you're evolving and doing business, that you can keep all of your ideas somewhere. So once we do these strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and I recommend each quarter that you try to find 3 projects that you're going to implement in your business. And we're going to maybe have so many ideas the first couple times you do it that you have 10 of these. Awesome. You have 10 of these great ideas. You looked at them. You can now weigh them. If you are somebody who has a lot of dependencies and things, and I'll get into that next time because I'm going to teach you how to do the actual plan to implement your ideas and fix your gaps in a quarter. But if you have a ton of these and you have something where you have to weight different things, let me know, because you can then go from here. We're going to call it a cost benefit analysis, but we're not actually going to weight anything. What I mean by that is, let's say that you have something that's technical and inside weaknesses, there's something about engineering or outsourcing or finding a co-packer or something like that that you don't have a relationship with. There's a way to take all of your ideas and add a weight to them. It's just mathematical, and then you weigh it, and you don't have to do that as a small business. I promise you, between your ability to understand your customer and your ability to just figure out what's going to be the priority things when you weigh these things, it's going to come out, and it's usually pretty intuitive for small businesses. Okay, so you're going to take these sheets. If you have more than 3, we're going to pick the ones that have the fastest ROI and the least amount of resources that'll have to be allocated, at least at first. And the fastest ROI, meaning return on investment, that needs to be considered for the time that you're spending. It needs to be considered for the amount of actual resources. Maybe you have increased labor. Maybe you're going to have, increased costs in your raw materials and things like that. Maybe it's just time. Maybe you just need to sit down and allocate the time to do this. Whatever it is, you're going to want to just make a decision. And again, I will make decisions based on those 2 factors primarily. What is my return on investment? What's my fastest ROI? Because I do have some long range projects that may span more than a quarter, but those long range projects are not the ones that I do in my 90-day plans, if that makes sense to you. So you can have kind of ongoing projects moving along, but still having these gap filling quick wins or those ideas being put into priority order. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my decision. Which of these things am I going to do over the next 90 days? Now, again, it doesn't mean it's going to take you 90 days to implement all the steps. It doesn't mean it's going to take you 90 days to do everything. It means I'm going to leave it out there for 90 days. I'm going to build everything around it. I'm going to go all in for 90 days. on these ideas. And because you did the SWOT, and because you did a quick cost benefit analysis, and you said, wow, this one has a lot of strengths and not a lot of threats, and it looks like pretty good opportunities, I think this should be priority one, right? Once you do that, we're just going to decide that we'll make the implementation plan on these ideas and then put them in for 90 days on the calendar. And this is why 90-day strategic planning can be such a powerful tool, because it's going to narrow you down. And I say 3 ideas, or maybe even 2 big ones if you're launching a whole new product and you have co-packers and that kind of thing. But if you're a small business, 3 good ideas, maybe that have some collateral impact, meaning that they'll overflow into other lines of revenue. And we'll talk about that next time too. Those can be very powerful for you to get started, and again, to see the value in creating the plan. The clarity alone in knowing that you're not chasing ideas that maybe don't have the best timing, or you're not chasing ideas that when you really look at it could end up losing you money, is just powerful. All right, I will see you in the next video on the series, and it's going to be on how to actually take these ideas that we did from our cost benefit analysis, choosing our priorities, and exactly how to make a plan. And it's, again, not complicated. You don't need software. If you like software, I'll tell you about a few of them, but you don't have to. If you found value here, please subscribe to my channel so that I can make sure that you see everything that I'm putting out. And if you need some support around strategic planning in any way, you can always check out my website, or you can watch for information. We have our next strategic planning 4-hour intensive on March 20th. Take care.